Okay, we're good. So it's actually, it appears to be working. So anyway, yes. All right. So all right, we're going to go ahead and start. Mark Blinch, welcome. I've never had a guest on before. I've never been a Zoom Pro user before tonight. This is all new, so thank you very much for joining us. I'm very excited to hear about your experiences with the A1 and about your work with the NHL. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And just, we'll just kind of do this here real quick. And I guess you guys, can you hear that? No.
Can't hear.
Okay. Bummer. All right. It was the Canadian national anthem. I guess it didn't work. So sorry about that, man. I was trying to do my thing, but anyway. So Mark, tell us about yourself. How did you get into photography? What's your background?
I got into photography in high school, just before the year 2000. I just wanted an easy course to fill a credit. And then I ended up falling in love with it. Ended up staying after school in the dark room and developing film and going out and taking bad pictures and doing all that sort of stuff. So I sort of fell in love with it that way. And then I decided to go to university for it. There's a university called Ryerson in Toronto. It's got a photography program. And I got my Bachelor of Arts degree there. And then from there, I did an internship with Reuters. So
the wires.
Yes,
okay.
The wires. Yes. So you'll see, a lot of my work is very photojournalist inspired and heavy. I think I still call myself a photojournalist, even though I kind of went full-time sports in 2016. But I covered everything: elections, big sports, news. I did it all. I worked for local newspapers here as well sometimes, and so that's where I came from. That's the world I came from. And in 2016, the Maple Leafs were looking for a new photographer, and I applied, tried out, and got the job. And so that sort of shifted my career into another path. So now kind of a full-time sports shooter now. I do work for the NBA. I work for Getty Images. I shoot baseball in the summer. And of course I work for the NHL and the Maple Leafs directly as their team photographer.
Yeah. So many of us, Rob included, our roots are photojournalism, and you can't ever leave that. You can't check it at the door. No matter what assignment you're going on, you bring all that stuff with you. And
I call it
it's good.
Brain.
It's all good because you're always looking for stories no matter what's happening.
Yeah.
It's
that's exactly
even in the middle of a game, you've got to be flying in the 10,000 foot range, looking down and thinking, all right, well, there's only 4 seconds on the clock. Where do I need to be looking? What is the story right now of this game? It's really,
right.
Yeah.
That's
I appreciate
exactly
that.
it. It's exactly how I work. It's, it's that old training is just never left. It's still always there. My brain is always where's the best place to be to get the thing that I need. Right. So, but yeah, that never leaves. And I'm happy that, that it won't ever leave, because I just think it's a good way of thinking. As a photographer, it's if you can tell a story with a photograph, you're doing something right. So, coming from that background really does help.
So tell me about.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Rob.
I think it's important too, if you have a journalistic background, you might be a little more aware of some of the other dimensions going on in the game. Obviously, if someone was traded, but it might be a person who was called up from the junior team or from the farm team or whatever, and this is their first game, or they end up getting their first goal. So having that storytelling background is advantageous, because you're I think you're looking for these littler stories within the story, you know, first NHL goal or first goal with
Right.
this team or whatever, other things that you just pick up on.
Yeah, definitely. I remember many times I've been over at the University of Tennessee in the old days and shooting basketball. And of course, the SIDs are coming around with halftime stats, and they're handing one to me, but none of the other photographers are taking them. You're like, hello. Yeah, this is the cheating. This is the way you cheat. You figure out what's going on. Here we go. Let's do it. You know.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
that's good. I wanted to ask you about the difference between being a team photographer and working for the NHL, because the NHL wants very different things than the team does. The team is often going to be more PR, you know, oriented. How do you juggle the two things? Because you're obviously working for both at the same time, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's actually the league and the teams are more aligned than one would think. The league is pretty good. They kind of defer to the teams for the kind of imagery that they're looking for. You know, for example, the Maple Leafs have a no fight picture policy that we follow. But anything other than that, like anything really goes. Like, I mean, we still have to send pictures of the other team, right? Because the other team uses it on their social social media platform. So, I mean, every night we send all of our pictures to Getty Images because NHL and Getty have a partnership that way. So all of our stuff goes to Getty Images, and it's there for anybody to buy or consume. And then so the other team gets the photographs too. So for example, when my team is getting beat up or scored on, we still have to send those pictures, you know, for the other team to use. And it's a courtesy when the Maple Leafs are out of town. Their photographers will send pictures of you know, Leaf scoring and stuff for us. So it's sort of a give take thing, but yeah, it's not that much. The NHL and the teams are kind of on board, and yeah, it's a pretty great place to work.
Do you always shoot on strobes, or do you sometimes shoot available light? Because there's advantages to each. I wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, I usually opt for the strobes, only because the quality is just unbeatable. I mean, you're talking about using 200 ISO as opposed to 2500 ISO. And we actually just got LEDs put in our new, we just got LEDs put in, and the light is like a stop brighter. And I was just goofing around and looking at, you know, using available light. And I still noticed that there's still, the quality is still not the same as a strobed image. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, we have giant strobes installed in the catwalks of our arenas, and this is pretty much standard for any arena sports. You know, NBA does it, NHL does it. Not all photographers want to use them. So the trade-off is when you shoot the strobes, they fire, it puts off a big flash, and then you've got to wait 1 or 2 seconds for it to recharge. So, you know, if you're shooting on an A9 or an A1 now at even 30 frames per second or 20 frames per second, that's the disadvantage. You're getting 1 frame per 1 second instead of 20 frames per second. So the trade-off would be, you know, instead of having a whole sequence of a play, you have, you know, one picture or 2 pictures per play. I usually find that if, like, hockey's really fast, so if they're coming in to score, usually I can get 2 off and then 3 off for the celebration. So I have about a five picture sequence. And from there, you just got to hope that you nail it. And then, you know, it's, when you do nail it, it's unbelievable. The pictures are bright. Everything's filled in. Like, you see the stitching, you see it, like the pores in the jersey,
the color,
the color pops, and
contrast.
Like Maple Leafs.
Yep.
Yeah, the contrast. Maple Leafs blue is a big thing in hockey. It's just a beautiful sweater that they wear, and it just looks unbelievable when the colors just pop off the jersey. So, I mean, I prefer using strobes, but yeah, the trade-off is that sometimes you're a little earlier and sometimes you're a little late, right? And with hockey, they shoot the puck, it goes so fast. You know, a lot of the times, I'd say 50% of the time, we have puck going in the net and you can see it, or you shoot too late and the puck's already on the ground and it's hidden, you know, in the net and you can't see it. So there is trade-offs for sure. But yeah, I love using strobes all the way.
I want to ask you, Mark, do you remember the first game you ever shot strobes on? Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah,
Tell us about that.
It was scary. Like I had been shooting Maple Leafs for, you know, pretty much 10 years before I got the team job. So, you know, I always watched their team shooters shoot strobes, and, you know, sometimes the strobe would ruin my photographs, but I never really knew what it was like. So I was just used to using the motor drive. And, but yeah, once you're on strobes, it's tough. You got to learn that. You got to pick your timing, right? So, my first game, it was against the Boston Bruins. Two Maple Leafs rookies who are now absolute juggernaut superstars. That was their first game too. And so I just remember Mitch Marner. He's one of the big superstars on the Leafs. It was his first NHL goal. He came whipping around right at the net, and I didn't really have a frame of the actual goal, but then he came flying around the back of the net, and I just had it perfectly. He was like the big celebration.
Yeah.
Cubo, yeah. And yeah, that was the you know. And the thing is, when stuff happens so fast like that on strobes, it's like you shoot it, and I know if something good's happened, I'll sit there and I'll pray that it's there. I won't look at it right away. But that's the thing. You never know because everything goes so fast. You shoot with strobes and then you think you got it and then you look at it and you don't, or, you know, hopefully you do have it. So yeah, my first game on strobes was something else, but you do get used to it. It's not as hard as it sounds, but you do eventually get a pretty good feel and timing for it.
So your Sony journey, we're curious about that. Obviously, the forum that we have is all about Sony. So do you remember your first like A9 experience, or like what would you using the A7Rs before that, or what's been your background?
Well, I used Canon before, and Rob, who's on this video chat here, had said, "Hey, you want to try out some Sony stuff?" I said, "Okay, no, that's cool." So for the most part, you know, I'd never really used it on strobes before. That was a whole nother journey. I think we'll get into later. But you know, I tried it out at tennis, and you know, the first time looking through an electronic viewfinder was a trip. You know, I always kind of feel like at the start, people were like, "Oh, what's mirrorless? Oh, what is that?" And then you try it and you're like, "Oh, what's this? No, this is not my DSLR." And then you try it for like a bit and you're like, "Oh, wow, this is really cool." See the exposure as I'm shooting. The thing like focuses, it will, you know, the eye focus was incredible. It's just like a whole nother world, you know. And now like that was a few years ago, but now as time gone on, I think it's a little bit more accepted, but way more accepted actually. But I just find that you know, the focus, the seeing my exposure through the viewfinder, being able to review pictures through the viewfinder, you know, as I'm shooting, I could just hit play and look through and make sure it's sharp and then keep shooting. You know, these were all things that I had no idea about, you know, being a DSLR shooter for the longest time. And yeah, the biggest thing for me was the biggest thing for me is focus, because you'd be like shooting sports and you get a bunch of frames off and you're like, "Oh, great." And then like, you know, the rule of thumb is like, "Oh, the best one's always a little out." Right. But I just feel like with Sony, it just feels like it's like always in, you know what I mean? Like, and
I
focus,
totally know what you mean.
it just grabs you. It just grabs the subject quite well. So, I mean, it's unbelievable. So, yeah.
Are you using tracking autofocus? Are you using flexible spot track? What do you typically do during games?
I'm still the boring middle dot
Oh,
guy.
center. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the littlest one too, and that's only because it's for I use that for hockey.
Okay.
That's because I keep what I want in the center of the frame. But when I'm shooting golf or tennis, or
Then you're
if
free
I'm
to move
doing,
around a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, then I'll use some of the other focus modes. I'll use the
Gotcha.
eye focus a lot for stuff like that, and especially when I'm shooting portraiture too. That's when I'll switch up the focus modes. But
Okay.
and that's only because I haven't really tried the other modes for hockey. But everything's just like hockey's
So fast. Right.
so fast and weird.
Basketball and
I don't
hockey
want
are really
any-
similar. There's always
Yeah.
stuff happening in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. So
Hey, Mark, maybe you could kind of talk about when you're at the game, where you're situated on the rink, and that, what are you, over the glass at a TV angle? Are you what would be termed as ice level? Just so people have an idea of where you're situated, and what's kind of happening in front of you.
yeah, so in hockey, we have holes in the glass, and so we're shooting ice level. COVID is a whole nother thing. We have 8 holes at our arena, which is a typical for any hockey. But we only have, I think we only have 2 holes available to us now. But anyways, yes, I am shooting ice level through a hole. So I use 2 bodies. And on the body for the stuff in front of me, I use an A7R Mark IV, and then for down ice, I have an A7R Mark III, of which I use in crop mode. I think we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about the A1 experience. But yeah, that's where I'm situated. I'm just ice level, and I'd rather. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else. I do a lot of artistic stuff. I set up a lot of remotes. I love shooting elevated, love shooting straight down. We put remotes all over the place. We put them in the net. We put them in the roof. We put them under the boards. And with COVID now, we're putting cameras in places where fans would usually sit. So that's been an interesting thing too. So.
Did you watch the presser on the A1, the launch? Were you able to see that live or no?
No, I didn't see the live. No,
Okay.
I didn't see the live launch. No.
Okay. Did you go back and watch that at all, or how did you find out about the camera?
I saw a tweet, one of the rumor sites, and I just remember waking up one morning and because I know, like, before the day it launched, there was a pretty significant rumor going around, and I woke up and it was like, oh wow, this is amazing. So I obviously wanted to try one right away. The biggest thing for me with the A1 was the sync speed.
Yep.
So
and that's why we're here.
Yes. Yes. So the sync speed. So when you're shooting strobes, if you can imagine how it works. So the strobe is like a big, powerful flash that comes from the roof, right? There's 8 heads, and they all go off at once, and I fire them using a Pocket Wizard radio. So the power of the strobe is your shutter speed, right? So if you think out, I think our strobes go 1/100th of a second. So if your shutter speed is this long, 2/50th of a second, let's just say for argument's sake. So that's how long your shutter is open for. The strobe is actually that much time of it, right? So while your shutter's open, it's also recording ambient light for 2/50th of a second, and the strobe is actually flashing at 1/1600th of a second. So that's what freezes your action. So with strobes, there's always a little bit of a problem. If there's a lot of loud movement in your frame, you can get ghosting, right? Because your shutter's open for too long, collecting that ambient light. So the flash goes, right, and it freezes your action, and then your shutter's open for longer. So if they're really moving fast laterally, you get a little bit of ghosting. There's after doing a bunch of research and I found this kind of a dumb hack to get a higher sync speed on Sony cameras. And then now with the new A1, The base sync speed is 400th of a second, which is unbelievable for strobes. It's ridiculous. So normal sync speed is 2/50th of a second on all the old the Pro DSLRs. So you get 2/50th of a second, and that was usually you get some ghosting sometimes, but obviously with the extra shutter speed, the higher your shutter speed is, the shorter your shutter is open, so less of a chance to get that streaky ghosting that you don't want. So that was the biggest thing that caught me with the A1. That was the biggest deal for me, was that. So but we can get into it in a little bit here. I can kind of show you the hack of how I do it.
And what you're talking about is hypersync. Hypersync is going beyond the sync speed of the camera. So,
right.
And obviously we want to also say that the sync speed is a mechanical shutter attribute rather than a electronic one. So you have to be in mechanical shutter in order to get to this high shutter speed, and then to hypersync, you still have to be there. So why don't you just go ahead and, because that was like a whole part of it. So go ahead and just jump into it. What was the first thing you did? Did you just put a pocket wizard on it and see?
Yes. So the first thing I did when I got the A1, I got to the arena, fired up the strobes, and I immediately tested to see if the sync speed was true, and it was. So full frame, we got it to 400th of a second, and then with in crop mode, we got it to 500th of a second. Now I say crop mode, and this is something that I'm not going to act like I invented crop mode, but this is something that is crucial to me, is the crop mode in these cameras. So this is the absolute main reason why I love using Sony's. So the sensor sizes are so big. So in the A7R4, it's a 60 megapixel sensor. In the A7R3, what is it, 48 or something like that, or 42? I can't remember.
42. Yeah.
42. And now with the new A1, it's 50, right?
Right.
50, give or take, or something like that. So what we can do now is actually crop the sensor down and use, I think, half of it, or a little bit more, half. I'm not sure how it works, but you're not using the entire sensor. So when you go to sync something on a full frame camera, if you go over the sync speed, you will get a little bit of dark banding where it doesn't sync. And then when you use the crop mode, you're hiding the part of that sensor. So now I'm able to get an extra shutter speed out of it. So with the A7R4s, on crop mode, this is what was crazy. It's still 26 megapixels. Okay. So that's still 6 megapixels bigger than any of those leading DSLRs. So you're still getting more file, but you're cropped in. So that is the drawback, you're cropped in. So you have to use different lenses, right? So your 7200 becomes, I don't know, a 140 to 300 or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So you use the wide part of your lenses, but that's where this little secret came in. It's a little 18 to 135 kit lens. So when I put that lens on a crop mode sensor, it actually becomes a 28 to 200. So for hockey and basketball, that's like perfect. That covers everything in front of me. It's perfect, 28 to 200. And that allows me to get the shutter speed higher to on the A7R4, I got to 500th of a second in crop mode clean. So that is like unheard of, right? Like normally you're syncing at 2/50th, and then now I'm at 500th of a second, and that just freezes everything now. And so now, then when I heard about this A1, it does it without, on full frame 400th of a second, crop mode 500th of a second. I was very, very excited to see it. So we were talking earlier how to hack for it. So this little thing here It's just a little Godox unit. So if anybody's ever used those Pocket Wizard TT6s or TT5s, they have a thing in it called Hypersync. And I'm not sure exactly what it does, but on these little units, this will delay a signal to the Pocket Wizard so I can get some extra shutter speed. I have no idea how it works. I found it, I stumbled upon this solution just with dumb luck. And so you set a little, you go into the menu, and then I don't know if you could see that. I think it's kind of blown out, but anyways, there's a little, inside there's a little menu option called delay, and you delay it by 4.4 milliseconds or something, and then it gives you 2 extra shutter speeds, 1 or 2 extra stops in shutter speed. So obviously with the A1, I was very, very excited to try it because I was wondering if this hack was going to work on the A1 as well. And lo and behold, on crop mode, I got it to sync to 800th of a second. So
that's awesome.
That's like, that right there kind of blew my mind. And like ghosting is like non-existent.
Gone. Yeah, because now your effective shutter speed literally is the flash duration, not what's on the camera. Yeah.
Right. So, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
One thing I think it needs to be clear to people is that you're cropping to APS on a full frame. But if you just used an APS camera, you wouldn't see that same gain.
That's right.
Flash sync. Because with the full frame, the shutter is covering the full frame and you're just taking the center portion. But with an APS camera, the shutter is just covering the APS frame size, and you're not really cropping in. So the hack only really works when you go with a full frame camera to APS. If you just had an APS camera, it's not going to work the same.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So
describe your pictures, like, because I know like now there's almost no ambient sneaking in there. You're seeing probably ice frozen when they stop. You're seeing shoelaces frozen. Just talk about the difference.
I can pull it up here if you want. Do I share the screen?
Yeah, go ahead and share screen. That's great.
And while you're doing that, so when Mark got the Alpha 1, it was the Thursday, the first day that the embargo was lifted. So the embargo was lifted at 10 a.m. on Thursday, and he shot the game that night. So we kind of got him the camera as quickly as possible.
That's awesome.
Just to see what could be done, with the strobes at the game.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
I can.
So this is not a good hockey picture. There's a reason I'm showing you this. So this is what I do to test my strobe sync. So if you see the burn at the bottom, that means the sync is a little bit off, and I have to change the value on the back of the Godox. And you can see here as I try different values, you can see the burn leaves the top of the frame and goes to the bottom of the frame. So this is where I usually like to leave it. So now there's too much burn at the top of the frame, and you can see at the bottom it's clean. So I usually like to leave it. So at 800th of a second, this is pretty much it. And for the proof, there it is. So you can see my value. Can you see the value on the side of the screen?
805.6.
So there
perfect.
It is. So there's the proof.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There. 800. There's all of the camera. So this file is still 5,600 pixels wide,
which is just a little less than what it would be on a 24 megapixel camera, which is still bigger than 1DX3 and D5, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So this is why, this is like crop mode to me is super awesome. So the one good thing too about crop mode, the bad thing is you lose your wideness, but you gain in length. So I use a 100 to 400 to shoot the opposite end of the ice. A hockey rink is much longer than a basketball court, right? So if you think about shooting a basketball court, hockey's even bigger than that. So I have a 100 to 400 for the opposite end of the ice. And that turns into
That's huge. Yeah. 600 millimeter.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. It turns into a 600 millimeter lens for the other end of the ice. Right. So the crop mode stuff is great. But I'll show you some. Here's actually this is actually a test on an A7R Mark IV, but this is a better way of looking at what happens when you.
And that's literally the shutter on the top. That's the shutter leaves. Yep, blocking.
And you can see how I'm just testing. I'm adjusting the values in this Godox unit, and then I find it here, right?
Yeah.
So if you look on the side there, it's 500 at 5.6, right? So
and that's on an A7R4. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's hypersync.
Mark, can you just say what that Godox unit actually, what it actually is called, or whatever the code number is, or
X2?
It's X2TS or something like that. There's I think the X1 still works. This is just an updated model. It's if anybody wants to know how to do this stuff, I'm good with email and Instagram DMs, but yeah, if anybody wants to know what I use,
I'll put up some affiliate links so I can make some money. Don't worry about that, Mark. I got you covered, brother.
That's a good point.
All right. I'm happy that helps. So anyways, enough. I guess we should stop talking about what it looks, but this is what it looks like. Can you see this okay?
Yes, looks good.
Yeah, so here it is. No fan stands. So this is what a strobed image looks like. So you can see puck going in the net, and this is again 800th of a second on strobes. And this is by no means the best hockey pictures in the world. This is just a typical night. So these are just some of the files that we used.
That's the edge of the hole there, right?
That's what the hole like. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is all A1 stuff. Like everything's just frozen. So the biggest thing too is with hockey is so fast is that sometimes you get a little bit of movement in the hands or the feet, or if their head's swiveling, but everything is just so
stopped.
Sharp.
Yeah.
And at our arena, we have new LED lights. So ambient is closer to the strobe. So I think the rule is what you want 3 stops between ambient and strobes.
That figure is good for DSLRs, but not for Sony because there's so much dynamic range. It's like really 4 or 5 is ideal for us. And you're getting probably to 4 now, I would think.
Right. Yeah. So,
yeah, this is great stuff, man.
Yeah.
Plus that APS-C lens gives you a little more depth of field too. So if you have a 2-shot like that, you're holding it.
Yeah, cool. Exactly. Yeah, and for me, it always bothered me. Like the classic hockey lens is a 7200, and I hate it when like the guys will come flying around at you, like you wouldn't be able to shoot this with a 7200. Like no. you need something wider. And so when they get close to you like this, and it happens all the time, it's like you can't shoot it, right? Like this.
And when they're far away, you can just crop.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it covers the whole end. It's like a 28 to 200, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark, isn't it kind of weird though that of all the great G Master lenses that Sony has and has come out with, that you're using probably what a lot of people would consider slightly amateur lens. Are you getting the resolution and quality of that? I know you're on strobes and you've got better f-stop. Maybe you can talk
well, I mean, so I always tell people about this lens, this 8 to 135, and everybody looks at me funny, because kit lenses in the past on DSLRs and stuff like that, and Canon and Nikon and stuff like that, they were just never good, right? They're always wonky and the color was off, and you get these weird magenta green edges and like, but I don't know why this lens is it focus always hits, and it's always sharp, and it looks like any other other lens I've used. Now, to be fair, I am shooting on strobe, so it does get a little bit of help. I mean, it's like a sub $1,000 lens, and it's like unbelievable. But the thing is that you're shooting it at 5.6, right? Because I'm on strobes. Now, like I always say, arena sports look good at 5.6, but outdoor sports, you know, like baseball or golf, I think you want to have 2.8 lenses to soften that soften that background. 5.6 isn't necessarily always the prettiest thing to use for outdoor sports. So this is a perfect lens. Like I think basketball and hockey are fine at 5.6. So it looks, you know, it looks great. And you're right, you get a little bit of depth of field. So when all these guys come together and celebrate, right? Like, you know, everybody's sort of sharp, right? So 5.6 does look pretty nice on strobes, right? So but the colors just, you know, they just really pop. And I was also sad because I couldn't shoot raw. Well, I did shoot raw. It's just
right. You wouldn't be able to see it.
the Adobe Adobe raw profile hasn't been updated yet, so I could only use the JPEGs. Now I know I could have used the Sony proprietary software, but I just learned that a couple days ago. I wish I had known that when I had the camera. But
yeah.
But yeah, like I mean, look at the puck on the stick, right? Like it's just
you can see the leaf. Yeah, the maple leaf is right there.
Yeah, you see the maple leaf.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, I mean everything's just, you know, this is again the advantage
awesome.
of having that.
Yeah, it's nice.
The advantage of having that wide lens. Like with a 7200, I would not be able to shoot this. 7200 would have cropped right into the two guys. You know. So yeah, it's pretty fantastic. You know, there he is looking in the air. Like when this is another thing, like when guys are in the air, like you know, it with strobes, it's always like, oh God, is that going to be sharp? But here it is at 800th of a second, right?
Yep.
Like, so yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah,
there was a frame back a ways where the puck was on its side and you could really see the maple leaf. I wonder if you could go back to one of those. It's go a couple forward from there. There you go. Just go ahead. Yeah, that one. Just go ahead and I just want to show people like how insane this is. Go ahead and zoom in on that. Just open it, and if you don't care,
yeah,
and pull it into Photoshop or whatever you use, and let's just take a look at how.
So that's 300%.
Yeah, that's insane, and it's still holding together.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is at 200%. This is in crop mode too, right? Like,
and 200% usually looks nasty. Usually 100 is like where it's the last thing you could look at without grossing out. I was just shooting basketball last night on strobes, and I was using the 24 to 105 using the APS-C down court.
Yeah, and
it was working. Yeah. It was insane.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like the one. Yeah, you could get away with shooting an entire game on APS-C with a 24 to 105.
You might have talked me into one, man.
Yeah, this is a good example. So they were, the guys were wearing different jerseys. So this is a big crop.
God, that eye is amazing.
So that's 200%.
From APS-C.
APS-C with this is the one again, the 18 to 135.
Wow.
Like it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's
Mark, just
Yeah.
so every once in a while I'm flipping back over to the YouTube live part where there's
Mhm.
50 or 60 people watching this.
Sure.
And I've noticed one of the questions that came up was, what brand of strobes are you using in the ceiling? And there's also on that YouTube, you'd see there's quite a few comments about the fact that you're using that particular lens. But what brand of strobes are you using, just to address that question that's been posted?
So they're Dynalite AP or Stadium Series something.
AP 1600s. Yeah, I've got a set
Yes.
of them too. They're awesome. They're like the best there
Yeah.
is, man. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm really sad because they just went under, right? It's scary for parts replacement, but they're unbelievable. The recycle time is ridiculous. So we actually have 4 sets of strobes. So um, 4 different photographers can be on at once, which we don't do because TV hates it. So we limit it to 2 photographers. But what it does is I'm able to use strobes for remote cameras and do some interesting different things with leaving only one light on, so it casts a shadow, or only leaving the front 2 lights so the back of the rink falls to darkness. So we could do a lot of stuff like but yeah, there's 4 sets of Dynalites up there, and there's 2 packs per head. So the recycle time is ridiculous. It's like I think it's half a second.
Yeah, because you're at half power. Yeah, so it's very, very short. Your flash duration's in the 7,000th of a second range is where it's at.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, because the normal flash duration at full power with a single bitube head is 3,500th of a second. So it's insanely quick. That's why it's like the best system there is ever, man.
Yeah, I'm super sad that they've went out of business. So I don't know.
But the guy that was fixing stuff for Dynalite is still doing it. So Johnny Prazeres, he's out there. Yeah, Johnny's out there. He's got parts. He's like servicing packs and heads and can get a hold of tubes. So it's not all lost.
Tubes is the tubes are the one
Yep.
that I'm worried about. Yeah, tubes are.
Yeah,
tubes is the big
not to worry. It's all good.
Yeah.
So that's all available.
That's good. If I lose one, I'll have to get that contact off you. But just to show, this picture sort of popped up. So this was with the A1. This was A7 or 4. But again, this is a 100 to 400. This is the kind of ridiculous pictures we can make now. Crop mode, right? You can just zoom right in. But yeah, strobes are to me still king for sure.
So Mark, if not during COVID time, but if a person is assigned to shoot a game at Maple Leaf or at of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they want to shoot on strobes, do they just rent those from the team, or is that really not available anymore? I know there used to, when I shot there, we could rent them for whatever games we were accredited for. But do you know what the fee is currently, and are they even available if you can get an accreditation?
No, not at our building. I don't know. I don't know if about other buildings. That used to be the case with us. This is all A1 stuff, by the way, while I'm just cycling through. No, you can't rent them at our building anymore. It used to be like that. So yeah, it's kind of tough to be able to try and light an arena if you just wanted to on your own. Usually the strobes are reserved for team photographers and league photographers. That's how it works at the NBA and in the NHL as well. At our arena, there's been a long-standing deal. Getty Images does get to use the strobes. So that deal was in place before I got there, and we still honor it. So Getty Images does get to go on the strobes at our arena for hockey, not for basketball, but for hockey.
You guys just split how do you do it?
So, so there's 4 sets, right? So we'll just give them one set.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and I'll use a set, and that's all we'll use. And then I'll use another set for some theater lighting situations. Let me show you, see if I got it here.
Hey, just while he's looking, all the questions you guys are asking on YouTube, I'm going to answer back on our Facebook group in the comments below the link to the video that's recorded. So don't sweat it. Like Kareem, I'm seeing your question about the zoom lens and sliding apertures and stuff like that. So don't worry about it, because the lens he's using is a floating aperture lens, but he's going to be setting it at 5.6, so it won't move at all or change the exposure as he zooms. But all these kind of questions I'll get to, believe me. No, so don't sweat it.
Yeah. So anyways, this is the theater lighting I was talking about. I've left the strobes off in the back to give it sort of old time hockey look, because this is how arena photographers started shooting, right? Because the problem was it was dark in these arenas, and these old photographers were using film, and it was like, and back then film wasn't, strong enough to just shoot available light. So a lot of the arena photographers would use just single strobes. And so this is what this is inspired from. It's the same idea. I only have one strobe head out of 8 turned on here. And so you see, you can see how the shadow hits the ice, right? And it gives it that old time look.
The only thing it's missing is you need to get the Coke and filter for cigar smoke, and then you'll really have something.
Yeah, and everybody wearing suits in the background.
And hats. They all wear hats.
Yeah, and hats. Yeah, so you can see it. It's a cool look, and people always respond.
That's cool.
Like when I
it's different.
When I put them on social media, people love this angle too. So that's a goal there. So here you can start to see. So this is at 500th of a second, and there's a little bit of movement on the player on the right. So that's the stuff you're trying to avoid, right? So this is at 500th of a second, and I'm still getting a little bit of movement. Most of the time, it does a pretty good job at freezing it at 500th. But yeah, you can see again, there's just a bit of movement here. It drives me crazy. So yeah, I'm happy I can go to 800th of a second soon. That to me is the biggest advantage.
Mark, we haven't talked at all about autofocus and the performance of the autofocus and the A1 compared to even the A9 II, which is awesome. Have you messed with that any, or did you stay away from the A9s because it was too small of a sensor in terms of megapixels?
No. Well, for me, A9 was the A9 camera was anything when I'm not shooting strobes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use the A9 for baseball. I use the A9 for soccer and football, golf, anything outside. I'll use the A9 currently. That's because I don't have an A1 yet. But yeah, it did. And the funny thing was, I was saying to the guys that work with me at the Leafs, I said, it's crazy how now the A9 II is a mid-range camera. Because before the A1 existed, it was like it was really like an unbelievable sports camera. 20 frames per second, and the focusing is ridiculous. I mean, with the A1, you were asking me about the focus. It was just the same. It just hit every time. I mean, the A9 always hit, and I understand that the focusing power is even better on the A1. So it's hard to even see how you improve on the A9. But yeah, it just hit. It was just always in. It just hit every single time. It perfect just like the rest, like the A9 did. But I don't know. I'm told it's better, but I don't even know how you can even measure that. But the one thing I'll say about the A1 shutter, the one thing I noticed right away is how snappy like the lag time is. So when I talk about lag time, I mean like when you hit the shutter, the amount of time when you hit the button, the shutter button, the amount of time it takes the shutter to fire. On the A1, it was like literally like it as soon as it just fired right away. And when I was doing my little hack with the Godox thing, my usual delay time is 4.4 milliseconds for the A7R4, and then for the A1 it was around 3.3 milliseconds. So that already tells me that the shutter is just responds faster, and it just clicks right away. So for me on strobes, that is a really big deal, because when you're shooting strobes, you hit the button as soon as you think something's going to happen, and you're not relying on a motor drive, because when you're on a motor drive and you're shooting 20 or 30 frames per second, you start shooting before the play, and then you get the play afterwards. But with this A1, I just felt like when I hit the button, it just like it was there. It just the shutter just snapped right away. So that was the biggest thing for me. The one thing though, I will say, the viewfinder, I had put it to, I think, 240 frames per second, which makes it smaller, right? Is that what happens? So my suggestion would be to leave it at 120 frames. I'm not sure if I'm speaking out of turn here. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Talking about the speed of the EVF?
The refresh rate. But I think when you put it to 240, I think that it gets just a little bit, the viewfinder gets a bit smaller. But when you leave it at 120, it's huge. So that's the one thing I wish I knew, because I was just screwing around the camera. I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, 240. And it was still a nice, big, beautiful viewfinder. But I wish I had known, because I'm told the viewfinder is even bigger, right? It's the biggest viewfinder there is. So am I right on that?
You can actually change the size of the internal of the viewfinder. There's a custom function that makes you either blow it up, because I wear glasses and I need the smaller one, but people who don't can use the bigger one. And I don't know if you use 240 if it gets smaller. Maybe I'll check that out.
I don't know if that's the case, but somebody
I'll check it out.
Mentioned that to me. I hope somebody doesn't see this and takes a miss it. Yeah.
No. I'll figure it out.
But yeah. So,
Mark, another thing. So you talked about using the Alpha 1 for hockey and which lenses, but you do shoot a lot of other sports. So maybe you can give people an indication of what other lenses you use for those other sports as well. So, if you're shooting the Jays or you're shooting Major League Soccer, what's your kind of go-to kit? How many bodies do you take to a game? Things like that.
Right. So I'll start by, so I really, and I don't want anybody listening to this to think that this is what you need, because you don't. I always answer like, you need 2 camera bodies to shoot sports. Like it just, you have to be able to switch lenses pretty quick. But for a hockey game, I'll usually in non-COVID times, I'll use 4 cameras. I'll use 2 cameras set up for strobes, and then I'll have 2 cameras set up for shooting in the hallway, and shooting in the dressing room, and shooting players preparing and that kind of thing. But for baseball and soccer, football, and all that stuff, I usually use 3 bodies. I'll have a 400 2.8. I'll have a 7200, and I'll usually keep a wide on me, just in case something happens in front of me that's crazy. So those are the 3 lenses that I'll use typically when I go to shoot baseball or football or soccer or anything like that. I don't mind the 100 to 500, but again, the 100 to 400, but again, I prefer the 2.8 soften the background when you're outside. But yeah, that's typically what I'll use.
That's cool. Is it always zooms for hockey? It just kind of makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, always zooms.
Unless you're overhead. If you're overhead, maybe 400 2.8 or something like that. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah, 400 2.8 from overhead. But yeah, for hockey, basketball, yeah, it's just, it moves around too much. You definitely need to use the zooms for it. I use a lot of prime lenses for low light situations where, again, I'm in the locker room, or I'm shooting the guys coming out of the locker room, or walking down the hallway to the ice, or then I'll use a lot of the primes, like the 85 1.4, 50 1.4, 35 1.4, and I'll shoot that wide open just to get that nice to get more light to the sensor. But yeah, any sports action, it's never really a prime lens unless it's a 400. Everything else is zooms for sure.
How much portrait work are you doing with strobes? Not arena strobes, but are you doing all the bubblegum cards, and are you doing headshots and all that stuff too?
No, I don't do too much portrait work. It's amazing how little they do of that stuff.
Okay.
It's I have done a few portraits of these guys, but typically what happens on media day, every sports team will have a media day, and this is where they get all the content for the year. So, and my job is to get the straight up boring headshot, which I wish I was doing something else, but that's my job. And they usually hire another outside commercial photographer to do the big fancy setup. But yeah, I mean, I'll every once in a while I do have to do a little portrait of these guys, and yeah, the Sonys work great for those too. So
cool. What else have we not asked you, Mark? Like, what's your greatest picture, man? Like, what's the picture you're looking for all the time? What is the frame?
Well, I did win a pretty good prize for a picture last year.
Is this World Press?
Yes, the World Press Prize. It's a.
Do you have that image handy where you can show it to us?
Yes. Let's see here. Yeah, there it is. So this is pretty much my favorite image of all time. Kawhi Leonard, buzzer beater. I'm not sure if everybody remembers this game, but it was Game 7. It was an inbound ball, and he dribbled a few times, tossed it up, it hit the rim 4 times, and everybody just sort of squatted down like this. Gave me enough time, for all the tension to build frame. And again, shooting strobes.
That's great.
Gave me this light. So I was very, very lucky that it hit the strobe when the ball finally went through the net, because it did hit the rim 4 times. It took like a second for the ball to go in. But wow. Yes, this did get a world
we talked about photojournalism when we started this conversation, and there's like the moment of sport, like the peak action of sport, but oftentimes it's the reaction to the moment that's more important. And man, you talk about reaction. This is it, buddy. You nailed it. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's definitely. I don't know if I'll ever see something like this again, but it's definitely proud of this one for sure.
Hey, David Snyder came back. He's like a Sony pro rep out east in New York. He is basically said that yes, the depending on the speed of the EVF, that's what it controls the resolution of the screen and the size as well. Right. And he wants to know what your workflow is for your live workflow. Like, are you jamming pictures out during the game, or are you going and pulling cards and stuff?
For us, for example, in the bubble, sorry, I should explain myself. DL had a bubble in the summer, and the return to play, one of the sites was in Toronto, so I was actually inside the bubble working for the NHL. So we actually, for our remote cameras, we actually hooked them up to Ethernet cords with that were directly FTPing all of the pictures back to our laptop right away. And that was using a Sony A1 II, because it's got an Ethernet cord port right in the side. So we were actually able to FTP all the remote camera stuff right back to our computers right away. So for remote cameras, sometimes that's what we do. We set them up to, we network them right to our computers. Because if you can imagine, if you got a remote camera in the roof and you're on the floor, it's a giant pain to get in an elevator and go up to the roof, unlock the door, go get the card, come back down. It's like a 15-minute ordeal. So it's really nice. So when I can, I like to wire the cameras up and FTP the images directly top. But typically for the handheld stuff, I have an editor at the rink with me, and he'll take the cards, or I'll drop the cards off to him, and he'll edit all of the pictures and send them out to Getty and the teams. And so I actually work with another photographer there too. So he edits both of us. And it's a pretty nice way to work. Typically though, I mean, if you're working on your own, typically if you're working for Getty, AP, or Reuters or something like that, USA Today, Arts or whatever, you'd shoot, and during halftime or in between the periods, that's when you'd send your images. So, but then you end up missing some time while the game starts again, and you're still filing pictures. So it's really nice that we have an editor to do stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the workflow.
That's cool. I don't really work for anybody because I want to own the pictures, and so I work for a lot of small colleges. And what I do is kind of cool. I change the Imaging Edge app so that it sends full-sized images, and I just email them to myself. And then at halftime, I literally just open up the emails and I have all the edited pictures that I did live. And then I just send those out, and bam, I'm right back down. I don't miss any of the game. It's kind of cool.
Wow. That's awesome.
And by the way, I don't know if you've, briefly. Yeah. Usually like very brief, but the other thing, I don't know if you've tried it. Did you try the Imaging Edge moving pictures to a phone with the app on the A1?
I didn't try it with the A1.
So fast. I mean, you can barely get your finger off the button you press to move it, and it's already there. It's like, holy crap, man.
What phone were you using?
I was using an iPhone, man, and it's just super quick. You can't believe how fast it is. I'd say it's 4 times faster, maybe 5 times faster than what I used to get, and it's probably even faster on Android. My guess is.
It probably is a 5 gigahertz band, right?
I don't know, man, but it just flies. It's just insane. You can't believe how fast it goes.
That's the problem. Like at the games, right now it's not a problem because there's no fans. But when you're trying to FTP a picture out, like, and there's like a million cell phones, and then even like the TV network stuff, anything that has like a signal on it, like a sound guy holding a thing, like those big sound things. Anything, like, it just crushes the signal, right? So, and I think everybody uses 2.4 gigahertz, but like if the A1 uses a 5 gigahertz band, I think it'll pass it to your phone really quick. So that's an interesting thing to try too. That's
cool. I'm just looking through the other questions that we've had. Sure. I'm just looking here. People really love that picture. And one of I think it's David is comparing it to Ollie versus Listed, which is, you see that the reaction is everything. I don't know, just a question, like, based on this, do you see a lot of NHL photographers almost having to move to A1 to get that super fast hypersync speed? Do you think others are going to find value in that in the NBA and the NHL?
Yeah, a lot, actually. I of course when I got the camera, I put an Instagram story out, and immediately it was like inbox. It's like, what are you doing? Is it good? Is it good?
You got hammered.
Yeah. And I'm still getting questions about it, but yeah, I've gotten phone calls from a couple of different NBA photographers. A couple of NHL photographers have reached out and asked, like, is it true? Is the sync speed 400th of a second? Yeah. There's a lot of buzz. There's a lot of people asking me about it. Because you got to understand that the people who shoot strobes, it's a small amount of people. It's not a typical. It is not a typical setup for most sports photographers.
But those of us that do it, we're desperate for this, man.
yeah. And so, I was talking to Jesse Garbrandt from shoots in Philly for the NBA. And he was like, yeah, the Sony guy told me somebody already got it to 800th of a second. I'm like, yeah, that was me. Like, what, really? Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there is, there's a lot of buzz for it. That shutter is just so quick. Like I said, even the response time.
I was just thinking about the old days. Historically, everybody shot Hasselblad. That was like the early SI stuff was all Hasselblad because it was a leaf shutter and you could sync at 500th of a second. Yeah. Then later on in 1982, Nikon came out with the FM2 with 250 sync. And that changed everything. All of a sudden, everybody was shooting that because it was so much more compact and it was easier to follow focus and everything. Right. And then later, the T90 came out with Canon that's also synced to 250. And then we've been stuck at 250 since 1982 until the A1. And, it's a phenomenal thing what they've done because they've given us a full frame camera syncing at 400, it's almost 500th of a second. And then with hypersync, you're going to go beyond what a Hasselblad could do with a leaf shutter. So I just didn't expect it. I mean, I've been begging them for 250 sync for, 5 years basically, but they gave me like a whole other thing. It's like typical Sony, like you can't imagine what they're going to give you. So sorry to gush, but I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah. Did you notice too, like when you're shooting with it on strobes, did you feel like it was any quicker to you? And the shutter sounds like so different too. It's like
it's right now. Sony will not publish their lag times, unfortunately, and Nikon traditionally has been awesome about that. They publish everything, but they will not publish it. But I know it's so fast because there's no mirror to move. It's just instantaneous. So even though it's mechanical and you have to wait a little bit, I feel like I'm right now. When I hit that thing, it feels live to me. So, I really, really love it. And I think the timing too, to me, it feels faster than the A9 II, which is already really fast. So again, this is why a lot of us are going to have to go with all A1s because you can't mix these things up. You just, you want to have that same sense of timing, that moment. When you're on strobes, you don't get a second chance. It's over. So, but anyway.
I think that's good though, Pat. I think it's good that you want to buy 2 Alpha 1s.
I know you do, Rob, because you work for Sony.
The guy to sell them to.
Exactly.
We've only actually got, everyone here realizes that Mark is in Toronto, but we've only got 2 Alpha 1s in Canada that we're kind of rotating around. So Mark actually got it first. The day that the embargo was over, Mark got the unit. And this week I'm taking it up to Ottawa to, Andre Ringette is the team photographer for the Ottawa Senators. So he's got a couple of games this weekend that he's going to use it for. And we're kind of trying to make our rounds, but Mark and Andre are the 2 NHL photographers in Canada that shoot with Sony. There's still a few other that we have to convert, which will give me something to do the rest of the month, I guess.
There you go. Hey, David Cleveland just asked a really good question. He says, can the A1 switch between regular and crop sensor while the images are buffering? And the answer is yes. It can. It's awesome. You can like zoom in and out the lens. You can punch in and out with a 1.5x in the sensor, and it's about the processor is so fast inside the camera, combining with the CFast Type A cards, which are so fast. There's really almost no. You're just always able to access menus, and it's just incredible. I've not found one instance yet. I've shot 4 days with the A1 so far, and I've never been held up and waited for anything when I wanted to access the camera anyway, which is such a huge
That was
thing.
something I noticed too. When you turn it on, it's on. It's ready to go.
Oh yeah.
There's no like image database file thing that from
no.
It's you turn it on.
It's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, it's ready to go. That was one of the things that's a huge improvement. Because you never really realize it. It's like sometimes you're just sitting there. It's like, holy, there's something to shoot, and then you turn it on. It's like that now. It's ready to go like right away.
Yeah, it's just amped up in every possible way. I'm so excited. The hardest thing about shooting this camera is going to put it back in a box and send it back to Sony. I'm hating that day.
Yeah,
it's coming. But
yep.
Well, we've been on for quite a while. I just wanted to say, Mark, I appreciate so much your time. You know, like I know during the season you're hammered all the time and you're editing and you're probably trying to have a life too. So I really appreciate it. And your coming on tonight has caused our little Facebook group to have all kinds of Canadians coming out of everywhere. It's really cool. I think I approved 12 people just today. So
I sent a few over myself.
We want to welcome, and I'm going to be looking for Tim Hortons to sponsor us maybe next month. That'd be awesome because we could use the money.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, do you have anything to say? You know, Rob is kind of like the godfather here. He sort of helped put all this together in the background. He won't show his face because he says he has to comb his hair, but I so appreciate you, Rob.
Well, it's not really combing my hair. It's just that I'm wearing a San Francisco 49ers shirt, and I have to put on a Strobe shirt if I was going to. But for those that are joining from Canada, welcome to the group. And I am the manager at Sony's digital imaging group. I organize the team. I put on events like this. But if there is something that for the Canadian photographers, if there is something that you're looking to get or you want to switch to the Sony brand or you need a lens or whatever, certainly you can reach out to me and I'll help you get the best pricing, and I'll be able to take advantage of any rebates or promos or whatever. You know, sometimes it's as simple as, boy, if you waited a week, that item would be on sale. So, you know, certainly there's not a lot of promos with the Alpha 1 yet, but any other thing, you can reach out to me and we'll make sure you get a great price and get a rebate, and, you know, try to convert as many people to Sony as we can. Certainly having Mark switch, I think it's been beneficial, and Mark, I hope you would agree, it's been beneficial to both of us. Yeah. I remember when you hadn't won the World Press Award, but you were nominated for the World Press Award. And my boss, who's the head of Sony Canada, the first thing he said was, before you'd even won, he said, well, make sure you send him a giant screen TV to, you know, congratulate him. So hopefully you've got that out of the box by now. It's been a little while.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing, which neither Pat nor Mark know. So Mark did this complimentary. The Pat's group is in the US, so I can't really be, you know, paying for a speaker to speak to the US. But when I mentioned that to my boss, he immediately said, well, since it's, you know, working with Pat and Mark Blinch is the speaker, you know, maybe we won't pay him, but I do have a lens for you. So I'm going to send a lens over to you, Mark.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. It's one that you haven't tried yet. It's the 135-1.8.
Oh, nice.
So
oh, man, that thing is awesome, dude.
I'll be able to squeeze that in on a couple of these.
Wow.
I've got a new lens that's unopened in a box, so that's
wow, thank you. I appreciate that.
Appreciate what
that's your new favorite portrait lens, dude. You will not want to take it off. It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
We appreciate what you're doing and taking the time tonight. So I'll get that lens sent over in the next couple of days.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that.
In my desk. So, you know, brand new 135-1.8.
Nice. Wow. Thank you so much.
Well, just to kind of end it all up, I just want to say how appreciative I am for both of you guys for being here. I love Canada. I've ridden every province on my motorcycle. I love it up there. I can't wait till you guys I can't wait till you guys let us back in. But this is the first of what I think will be many interviews. This has been very successful, I think, and I want to keep doing this. So anybody that's watching, if you got somebody you'd like me to interview and get on to our forum, let me know. And thanks so much for watching, everybody. And I'll repost this in our group as a recording. So thanks so much and have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.